Scooby-Doo, Scooby-Doo, Scooby-Doo.
On this episode of the History of the Chorus podcast with Curtis and Josh, we continue our look at the band known as Zayo. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at IsSurvivedByPro for news and the latest episode postings. And make sure to subscribe to the show, leave us a 5-star review, and write us a comment on YouTube or whatever podcast service you're using. Make sure to check us out on TikTok and give us a follow at IsSurvivedByProductions. And if you'd like to see us do some live streams, leave us a comment or tweet us the keyword stream. Now, without further ado, let's start the show.
The devil is in Atlanta, army surrounded.
Bombs rain down like heaven's tears. The earth shall die and disappear. And today, we wish the skies were gray. For now, they're just black and empty. And when the end she comes, rains down on everyone, fire from the sky. And when the end she rides, breathing out suicide, life and death are one. Welcome back to the History of the Cores podcast. Sponsored by the Church of the Seventh Track, where each and every episode we take a look at the history of a band from the core genre. I'm Curtis, and with me, as always, Sky here, my good friend, my good buddy, my great pal, Josh. What up, Josh?
What the hell was that sound clip?
Liberate te ex inferis.
Play it one more time.
You don't remember that from last
I do
episode?
remember that.
I put the echo on it though, so that kind of made it sound a little different. Here it is.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh god.
The Pope. He made an appearance.
He's blessed the Church of the Seventh Track.
He has blessed us. What up, Josh? What's going on, man?
Not much. Oh, hey, I did want to start the episode with a post that Face Down Records put out within the last couple days. Actually, I think it was a few days ago. The fact that Impending Doom refused to toe the line with their spiritual convictions in a genre long known for its demonic inclinations is paramount to the band's impending notability. And that's because this is the 16 years for Nailed Dead Risen, that first album.
Okay. Nice.
But yeah, I immediately thought of you whenever I saw that clip. And also watching the Lesser Lights of Heaven documentary. Because that's a thing I think that Zayo has constantly kind of dealt with.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same things. So
for sure. Yeah. And we'll talk more about it when we get to it, but I could see that. Some of those guys look like they were either high or drunk, or maybe just really sleepy. I don't know. Those red bags under their eyes, man.
Oh, in the doc?
All right. Yeah, in the documentary.
Oh, like Dan? I mean, Dan always looks like that.
I know. It's just funny. Dan and then Steven, who played drums on Funeral of God, he looks like he's just like zoned out or something. He's all...
Yeah.
Okay.
He always looks a little zonked out.
Yeah. But anyway. Yeah, I get that. And... Okay. I mean, I'm starting to come around with Impending Doom, you know? And I know you posed the question.
I'm truly mind blown how you can't listen to... I'll give you from like Baptized in Filth on. It just like there's not a whole lot that's new there, so it does get a little bit repetitive. But if you don't listen to Nailed Dead Risen and Serpent Servant, and they're not one of your like in your top 15 at least after that, like something's wrong, because those two albums are stupid good, especially Serpent Servant. Like Nail Dead Risen is pretty raw, but Serpent Servant, that one is like top tier.
Well, let's go ahead and say this now. In the next, I don't know, 2 to 3 bands that we pick, one of them will be Impending Doom. So we can discuss it and we can put it to bed. How about that?
Thank God.
It's what I wanted. That's why we did this podcast in the first place, so we can talk about Impending Doom.
Yeah, I will never stop advocating for them.
No, we'll definitely do that band within the next couple of bands that we pick. So that way we can actually get through it and talk about it. Yeah.
It'll never be
All
over.
right. I'll never stop fighting. Okay, a little housekeeping. Number one, a little reminder for people. Not this episode, but the next one, the final episode of our Zayo series. Josh has got a little top five countdown coming. Hopefully he's working on it. It's Josh's top 5 Zayo album covers. Not this episode, but the next one. So make sure you come back for that one to see his terrible picks. I mean, his picks.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you something. I'll give you a little teaser.
Whoa, a little teaser here. Listen up.
The one behind me makes the cut.
Ooh, okay. Which makes me wonder about another one that I feel is kind of similar to that one behind you if it made the cut. But we're gonna have to find out. We're just gonna have to find out next week.
Yeah, we're gonna have to find out.
Alrighty, man. Cool. I'm looking forward to that one. That should be a good one. As always, Josh, what did you listen to this week? Go ahead and start us off.
You're gonna think it's all Impending Doom, but I'm actually gonna throw you a curveball here, because most of the stuff I listened to this week that wasn't Zayo was all very different from
Zayo.
Yeah, very different from Zayo.
Okay.
Sorry, it's still doing that thing where it doesn't just put it at the bottom or the top of the list. So there we go. Okay. So on this side, top one is going to be Third Eye Blind. That's out.
It's kind of cutting off the name, so it was like honey blind. What honeybird? What is that? What the heck is that? And it dawned on me. I was Third Eye Blind. Okay, gotcha. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Out the Vein. Definitely the best Third Eye Blind album.
What songs are on that one? Is there a bunch of their popular ones on there?
It's got a lot of the big ones.
Okay.
Yeah, not all of them, but it's got quite a few of the big ones. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I got the Postal Service over here.
The Postal Service,
baby.
Nice.
Because I always loved Death Cab, and then Postal Service.
It's a good little chill out.
It was a one-off.
Yeah.
Like if he did a bunch of albums, it would be like kind of meh. But he just did the one, so
Yeah.
So listen to that one. That's a great one. Up Above Me, Up Here. Do you remember this album? I used to rock this one a lot.
Oh yeah, that's a good one, man. That's a really good one.
Yeah, that's a great one. Modest Mouse. We Were Dead Before the Ship Even Sank. And then behind me here is an old favorite. It's going to be hard to see.
Daybreaker? Okay. I was thinking it was Daybreaker. Nice. That's a good one, man.
Daybreaker and the Northbound Trains EP. Yeah, I'll never stop loving Daybreaker. Just sucks I didn't get more Daybreaker.
He sounds just like the dude from Fallout Boy. He always made me think of him. What's that guy's name? I always felt like he sounded
Patrick
like
Stump?
him. Yeah, Patrick. He kind of sounds like Patrick.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't.
It's like that. It's a very like throaty kind
you
of.
Can lean on me.
Okay, I could see that a little bit.
That's a good album, man. I'm closing this episode. I'm going to listen to this album right now. Yeah, I'm
Let
gonna have
me
to throw
ask
that
you
one on
this.
this week,
I
man.
know so far we have not talked about a lot of bands like this, but you brought up Patrick Stump before we get into Zayo here. Brought up Patrick Stump. Um, I would say my favorite Fall Out Boy album is probably Take This to Your Grave.
That's
But
which one is that? Is that the one that has Sugar We're Going Down?
no, that's the second one.
Okay.
And it's the one that has like a blue and black
Oh,
cover with them on it.
that's the one you're talking about?
Yeah, Grand Theft
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Autumn.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you on that one. That's my favorite. I was
Mhm.
thinking that was the one before that one. It's called like a night out with Fall Out Boy or something like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that's the one I was thinking that anyway.
That one's
Yes, I agree
okay,
with
but Take This to
no,
Your
no.
Grave is amazing.
Yes, I agree. Take This to Your Grave is my favorite.
I have a hard time choosing a second after that
Okay.
because I always thought it would be From Under the Cork Tree, but Foil I Do like matches it song for song, just being great. Like every song, great, 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 great.
Is that right after Under the Cork Tree?
That was either the next one or the one after that.
Because I never listened to anything after Under the Cork Tree, full album wise. Now I heard, songs that they put out on the radio later on, but never listened to a full album after Under the Cork Tree.
Well, this is
This
this is
Put it
your
on the
homework
list.
this week, my
Put it on
friend.
the list. I've got about
Impending
four
Doom,
stuff that I have to listen to now. Oh, five. Okay, never mind. Five.
Impending Doom, Serpent
Uh,
Servant, and Fall Out Boy, Full of Doom. So
okay. Okay. I got some homework. I hate homework. Thought I was
yeah,
done with
Curtis,
school.
Curtis, can we talk about Zayo? I'm dying to talk about Zayo,
You don't.
especially
You
this
don't.
3 album
You,
freaking run of
you,
Zayo.
so you don't want to hear what I listen to?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Show me. What do you got? What do you
I want to
got?
put you in the waiting room if you don't mind. I'll just tell everybody
I got
myself.
ahead of
You can just
myself.
wait, man. By the way, don't forget to change your background back. I know
Oh, yeah.
you're kicking
God, I was
kicking
gonna do it
yourself
again.
over that there. While I try to figure this out. How do I do this? Shazam! Sparkle, sparkle. Man, I had
Mm.
a hankering, a taste, a thirst, a yearning, some might say, for a good old Legend EP by Abigail Williams, dude.
It's a
So
great
many,
EP.
so many good memories, man. That's some nostalgia right there for me. I used to rock that a lot back in high school, man. That was a good
Yeah.
EP.
Abigail Williams is
Um,
solid. Some
did
grade A American black metal.
did they re-record that album? I
Legend?
felt like they I felt like they at least re-recorded some songs off of it.
I don't know. I know they put out at least 1 or 2 full lengths after this,
Yeah.
but
Well, they put one out not so long ago, I think, from what I
did
was
they?
looking at.
They still going strong?
Yeah, and well, but the bad thing is it's down to one guy and a bunch of live musicians.
Mm.
So, yeah. Yeah,
Michael Keane and the Faceless.
yeah, there you go, man. The one in the top right corner is Manchester Orchestra's freshman album. I'm Like a Virgin Losing a Child. That's some good nostalgia for me right there.
That's a
Back in
weird
the day,
album name.
man. Yeah, it's strange.
What
Not
the
really
hell does
sure.
that mean?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know if it has any. I always kind of felt like it had something like some reference to like Mary Magdalene, Jesus' mom.
Okay.
But I'm not really sure because he grew up Christian, and at that time he was still kind of like relating to being Christian or whatever. So I always kind of wondered maybe if that was like a reference to that or something.
That didn't
I don't
even
know.
pop in my head. I was just like, what is that supposed to be like a paradox he's saying? Like, yeah, but
Yeah,
I got you.
it's Andy Hall too. So, and then I had another yearning, Josh, another hankering.
Mm.
Decided to go back for seconds for a little calculating infinity.
Yes.
And man, I
Yes.
can't remember the song name right off the top of my head, but it's right in the middle of the album. And I think he says Sundress or Sundred Devils. Yeah, man, I can't remember right off the top of my head. Oh, of course, now you don't want
Is
to work with me.
it Destro's Secret? The
Yes,
running board? Okay.
Destro's Secret. Secret. Okay, good enough. He says, "Where'd you go? Where'd you go?" Sun dripped devil, scratch out my eyes. Just that part of like that build up where he's just kind of like saying it and then he's kind of getting like yelling it. And then the part when like the drum just come in. It's like, oh God. Oh, the chaos, Josh. Oh, so good, man. So
Yes.
good. Love that album, man. Love that album.
I
But
should have
yeah,
tried
that
to
is
push them on you a little earlier.
should have, man. Because that's right up my alley. That early math rock
Hey, I
chaos.
I did you a solid. I brought you Daughters. That's about
It's
as
true.
dirty math rock nonsense as you can get.
Short songs, short, sweet, to the point. Speaking of short, sweet, to the point, this is my third episode of the day, Josh. I just recorded 2 episodes of the After Hours podcast, so
Oh,
I'm running on fumes here. So I may have to get you to talk a lot um, and share more thoughts. But I know you're dying to talk about this episode, so
I'm
you
dying
already
to talk
expressed
about
that.
this.
So without further ado, let's shut up. Let's get right on into it. We are continuing our look at the band known as Zayo. So where we left off, the band had broken up basically after self-titled album and Parade of Chaos, basically having 2 full-time members writing and recording that album, and then Dan kind of coming in when he could to do vocals, and just a mess, man. Parade of Chaos, as one of the reviewers of that album said, really lived up to the band's or to the name for the band at that time because of the chaos that was going on within the band with lineup changes and just uncertainty. So we're left with basically a farewell tour breakup, but a short time passed after that, and the members from the Liberate era, that is Dan, Jesse Smith, Scott Mellinger, Russ Cogdale, and Rob Horner, would reconvene with the promise of new music. But that promise quickly fell apart as a, quote, too good to be true deal for promised funding for new Zayo music would fall apart. They do kind of go into more detail about that on the Lesser Lights of Heaven DVD. Very unfortunate because it's kind of like I think of Scott, talking about, he was really worried because they were starting to kind of get back together and make music and play music and go on tour and such. And he was getting excited because he was really wanting to, do this thing for real at this point. And he didn't want to screw around. He didn't want to mess around. He didn't want to go, 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out. He wanted to do this thing for real, pedal to the metal. And so for him personally, it's like, when the deal kind of fell through, it was like, oh, great, here we go again. So this actually led drummer Jesse Smith to reach out to One Ferret Records for funding of a brand new album. If you remember, Ferret Records was the one that put out Mailing, didn't they? Yeah, they did Mailing.
Yeah.
Who else did they do? I was trying to remember some of the other bands that we listened to that came off of Ferret. Obviously, Zayo for
Yeah.
these 3 albums.
Didn't Every Time I Die do a couple on Ferret?
I don't think they did. Yeah, I don't think they did, Josh. I don't know. It feels like, to me, Ferret always kind of felt like kind of this southern metal label.
Yeah.
So maybe like From Autumn to Ashes, stuff like that, maybe. But anyway, but as some demos were recorded, Dan would be reluctant to fully commit to the band as he faced his personal addictions. Now, in the meantime, the band recruited society's finest vocalist, Joshua Ashworth, to take Dan's spot as the band played a few shows and recorded some more demos. At a couple of festival dates in 2003, Living Sacrifice drummer Lance Garvin was asked to fill in for Jesse Smith on drums as the fellow members couldn't find the drummer. You know, we've talked about before in the last couple of episodes the kind of in and out personality of Jesse Smith. You know, one day he's like, I love this band and I love you guys and I want to do this forever. And then the next day it's like, I hate you guys and I can't wait to get out of Zayo. And he's, it's like, here we go again. And I feel like, in the early half of Zayo, you really see Jesse as the main cog. He's the leader, everything kind of goes through him. And I think at this point, we're seeing a transition. We're about to see the transition of leader from Jesse Smith to Scott Mellinger. It really feels like Scott's about to become the next cog in the machine, the driving force behind Zayo to make it what it is today. So as turmoil within the band arose, again, both Russ Cogdale and Scott Mellinger voiced their opinion of not doing Zayo without Dan on vocals. It was at this time that both Jesse Smith and Rob Horner decided that they would leave the band and start their own project entitled Gods. So now we're basically down to Russ and Scott, and then Dan's still trying to figure out what he wants to do. Sometime later, Dan would rejoin the band, and the trio would recruit Jade Meridian's bassist Sean Koschek and drummer Stephen Peck to round out the new lineup. Now, Jade Meridian was a side project that Russ Cogdale and Scott Mellinger formed right after the farewell tour. So that's how they got these guys to come in. Which leads us, Josh, to 2004's The Funeral of God from Ferret Records. Produced by Eric Rachel, I think it's Rachel. Eric Rachel and the band. This is the only album for bassist Sean Koschek and drummer Stephen Peck. Now, originally, Josh, the album was going to be titled Live from the Funeral of God, just like the song, but management steered the band away from the name in fear that fans would think this was going to be a live album. Now, the band did a promotional split in late 2003 before the album released, with the band bleeding through to promote a song off of the new album. That song ended up being The Rising In, the first revelation. And talking about the album's concept, it is a narration of an apocalyptic story in which God, fed up with the path chosen by humanity, decides to disappear, leaving humanity to its fate. Subsequently, the world falls into a state of war and self-destruction. However, man soon reverts to a state in which he waits for God to return. Now, John Hamilton from JesusFreakHideout.com reviewed the album upon its release, saying, quote, though Zayo, let me try that again. Quote, thought Zayo was long gone? You were so wrong. You should have seen your face.
You should be so embarrassed.
Exactly. Many metal bands have come and gone, never lasting even 5 years. Some of the more fortunate ones might actually make it a decade. Enter Zayo, a band with 15 years of some of the most brutal metal under their belts. They've survived the new metal craze and are still cranking out good music. With The Funeral of God being their 10th album. Good Lord. You might expect Zayo to experiment with something different. Well, they did. With a new lineup and a new record label, they are harder and heavier than ever. The very first song in the album, Breath of the Black Muse, is sure to prove anyone Zayo is back and at the top of their game. Fiery hot lyrics and a growling death metal styled screaming provided by Dan is a combination that is sure to please the toughest fan. Newcomers Stephen Peck and Sean Koshik fit right into what has become Zayo's strongest lineup to date. Peck proves that he can double kick his way through any song, while Koshik pumps out some of the strongest bottom end ever heard in a Zayo album. Preach it, brother. I agree with that because the bass is thick and nasty on this album. That's me personally. That's not John. That's me saying that now. Now back to John. Now I've lost my spot. Whilst Mellinger and Cogdale's presence is loud and unmistakable on this album, and so are Mellinger's backup vocals, which add a new side of Zayo. Throughout the entire album, we're tossed and turned into a frenzy of metal riffs, but sometimes it takes the listener somewhere they don't want it to go, like the track The Lesser Lights of Heaven. Lesser suffers mostly from missing a really good vocal melodic note. I think I've missed it. What was it? Really good vocal. Suffers from missing a really good vocal track, which should have been offered instead by Mellinger. But Funeral ends on a surprisingly melodic note. There we go. Psalm of the City of the Dead is a grand finale that takes the listener up and down from heavy distortion to a piano and clean acoustic guitar playing, while a female vocal sings, "These streets are paved with gold. You're my everything. My soul is growing cold." My only problem with the entire album is the ending of Psalm. An emo-esque guitar with piano and strings come in at the close of the song, and then it roughly fades out. We all know Josh doesn't like a fade out at the end of a song, the end of an album, so I'm sure he could probably agree with that one. After all the rumors circulating and after switching from Solid State Records to Ferret Records, I believe that Zayo has a great amount of steam left in them to continue putting out strong records. The Funeral of God is proof. Songs on this album include Breath of the Black Muse, The Rising In, The First Prophecy, The Last Revelation, The Last Prophecy, The Last Song from Zion, Live from the Funeral of God, The Lesser Lights of Heaven, In Times Gone Past, Praise the War Machine, Truly, Truly, This Is the End, I Lay Sleepless in My Grave, Psalm of the City of the Dead, and a bonus track, Romance of the Southern Spirit. All right, Josh, I've been talking. I've been rambling. Now it's time. What say ye, Josh, on the Funeral of God album?
Before I give you my review of the Funeral of God, I wanted to say that we were both right. You were right about Ferret music fostering some of the more southern bands within those genres. They had they've had Devil Wears Prada since 2005.
Okay.
Zayo.
Wait, Devil's still on it?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Every Time I Die for pretty much their entire career.
Really?
From 98
I
to
don't
the
remember
end.
that. Well, this last
Um,
one was on Epitaph, though, I thought. Wasn't their last one on Epitaph?
I don't know. It was just a
Anyway.
2022.
Okay, anyway.
Heavy, heavy, low, low. Converge.
Nice.
So, Poison the Well.
Life Once Lost, are they on there?
Chimera. I don't know. I'm not going through the full thing.
No, you're good. You're good.
In Flames, Shadows Fall. Misery Signals, Bless the Fall, Maylene. Yep, Life Once Lost. Alicia. Knights of the Abyss. Yeah, so they really catered to a lot of southern bands.
So, okay, so I have Every Time I Die on Ferret, they did the Burial Plot, Bidding War. No, excuse me. Sorry. Last Night in Town, starting with Last Night in Town, Hot Damn, Gutter Phenomenon, and then The Big Dirty, and then New Junk comes out on Epitaph. So I don't know where you're
Okay.
seeing your
I
deal,
mean,
but
it just says 1998 through 2022.
yeah, I'm not. Maybe they're just talking about the band because remember, think about it, 2022 is the last time they were around. So maybe they're just talking about the band.
Yeah, maybe. That's weird.
Yeah, because about to say Epitaph did everything for Every Time I Die from New Junk to or through Radical.
Okay.
So, but anyway,
Hmm.
they were on there. So, anyway, anything else
No.
on Ferret or okay? Now back to regular programming.
I just wanted to say that before I forgot about it.
No, you're good.
The Funeral of God. I think that review was meh because Lesser Lights of Heaven doesn't fall off at all for me. Like that's a great track. There was no
Agreed.
missed opportunity. Like everything was totally fine there. He was just trying to find the one like slightly lower point in the album, I think. And it happens to be like, the
one of the better songs on there,
sixth
man.
track there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Speaking of that, there was another review I had seen that I read that, and this one kind of ticked me off. They said that the Rising In was a terrible single. And I about freaked out. I was thinking, why would you ever say that? That is a sick second song, man.
I don't know
It's
what
the way
they were
it built up
looking
at the very
for.
beginning. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Is like, what are you looking for, dude? That song has
I don't
everything
know.
you need. Yeah. Anyway.
But
Yeah.
yeah, overall, like this album is amazing for me. What's really great is this album has no low for me. Every song is amazing, just start to finish, awesome, perfectly put together. The production's really good also, which has always been something that Zayo has kind of lacked in, albums before this.
Yes.
Could you
Got some beef
imagine
behind it.
The Fear Is What Keeps Us Here with the same production level as Funeral of God? Like it feels like it falls off just a little bit, just production wise. Like everything still sounds like the riffs are great, everything's put together well, but it's not. I don't know. Yeah, it just doesn't have as much oomph behind it as this album does, and it feels like a production issue.
Okay. Well, yeah, I've got some things to talk about the production on Fear, and I'll save that for when we get to that album. But I hear what you're saying too. It would be interesting to hear what Fear would sound like with Funeral's production.
Yeah.
But yeah,
because it also feels like the production goes back up to about this level with Awake. So yeah, I don't know.
There was. I'll just say this: there was purpose for what they did on Fear, from what I've read.
Were they just trying to make it sound more kind of horror-y and?
We'll talk about it here in just a little bit. Let's focus. Let's focus. Let's focus on Funeral here.
Yeah,
so
damn, man. I don't even know what to say points about this album. There's no low points for me.
My favorite track bass,
is man. The bass is so sick.
The two songs
also sick, dude. Like
yes, but the two songs that like I'm just like, oh, the bass is so good is Rising In and Lesser Lights. Oh God. I mean, just like rattle my rib cage, man.
Yeah.
With that bass. Oh.
I think Praise the War Machine is my favorite track.
6.
Yeah. So good. And yeah, that combination of Russ and
Scott. Oh.
Yeah, Scott.
Such a combo, bro.
Stupid good. I mean, we can talk about when we talk about the documentary, but in a lot of ways, I still stand by what I said that Jesse was Zayo. And until they decided to just part ways, that's when it really became like, okay, well, like Dan is Zayo, and that trifecta is Zayo. Dan,
Yes.
Russ, and Scott. That
Yes.
is like that's the winning combination. I think you could insert a drummer or insert a bassist, and with those three guys, it's still always going to sound relatively the same.
I can't remember what his name is right off the top of my head, but he ended up forming the Juliana Theory. He played guitar in Zayo for one album.
Russ.
No, not Russ. What is his name? He was on Where Fire and Blood Bring Rest. Brett
Yeah.
Dieter.
Oh, okay.
So let me ask you, do you like the combo of Russ and Scott better on guitar, or do you like, even though we only got one album of Russ and Brett, which combo do you like better on guitar? Because I mean they did some good stuff on Where Blood and Fire
Yes.
Bring Rest, man.
Yes.
It was a
I
little more
think
simplified, but it
I
was some
think I
good
have to
stuff.
go still Russ and Scott.
Okay.
And I
I
think
would too.
because it's more consistent,
Mhm.
it's time tested. We've got multiple albums of that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I just feel better. I feel safer about a
Okay.
Zayo album in their hands.
Yeah. I just thought I'd throw that out there, see what you think.
And then the album ends great. Psalm of the City of the Dead. I was just
It's a
singing
good
that
one,
in your
man.
car the other day.
It's a good one. Such a good one, man. Yeah, there is no low point. And to any person that says that there's a low point, like John from Jesus Freak Hideout, I mean, I'm with you. It's like you're just searching for something that way you can't say it's perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing's perfect,
If you
but
have
I
to
mean,
dig, if you have to dig at it and what you come up with is a song as good as that, then,
yeah.
they're doing something
Oh
right.
man, and it's so simplified with the lyrics, especially in Lesser Lights. It's just, God, so good, man, so good.
Yeah.
Um, the bonus track, I just want to say this real quick. Bonus track, remember this song, Romance of the Southern Spirit, because they're going to end up re-recording it and using it on Awake album. So we'll talk about that song again here later on.
Fun
Anything
fact, that
else?
is
Go ahead.
one of my favorite Zayo songs.
It's a good one, man. It's a really
Yeah.
good one. Is there anything else you would like to say about Funeral of God, Josh? I mean,
I don't think so.
it's such a good one. It's like, how much more can we really say about it?
I mean, it falls in like the top three Zayo albums for me.
Okay. Yeah. Cool, man. When I think of Zayo, this is the album I think of, because this was the one that I think this is the first one I ever listened to all the way through. And then I think I jumped over to Where Blood and Fire Bring Rest. I think because I was more attracted to the album artwork on Where Blood and Fire. It's like, oh, fire coming out of a man's eyes and face. All right, let's see how brutal this is gonna be.
And brutal it
It
was.
would be super disappointing if I saw that and be like, this has got to be a brutal album, and then I turn it on, it's like music that like the Postal Service does. And you're like, what? What the heck? He's like, what the heck, man? All right, cool. That is 2004's Funeral of God from Ferret Records. As a result of major success from their latest release, the band would see heavy touring in the States, and also saw the band tour Europe like they never had before. But soon bassist Sean Kosick would leave the band during touring. His departure led to longtime friend / touring manager and ex-member of the band Pensive, Marty Lunn, to join the band on bass. A year later, and just 2 weeks before a tour with Bleeding Through, drummer Stephen Peck would quit, leaving the band to scramble to find a replacement. Enter one Jeff Gretz, who would quickly be recruited by Dan to join the band on drums. Now, a live recording of both sets at Los Angeles and San Diego on their Stress Tour would be featured in a new DVD entitled The Lesser Lights of Heaven, which mapped the band's history up into that point in 2008. Now, I know this is new because we've never said this DVD title before on any of these episodes. We've never talked about it, nothing, but we're going to talk about it now, right here. Now, this is, we're finally at the point where we can really deep dive into it.
Oh,
The Lesser Lights.
I was gonna see. I didn't know what order you'd plan on doing this. I was gonna see if you wanted to go through the next two albums and then talk about the doc at the end, just really like free form.
Yeah, we can
like,
do that.
Just kind of talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
I feel like that would be.
Yeah, sure. We'll come back to that. At this point, they do release the DVD, Lesser Lights of Heaven, but we'll talk about it a little more freeform.
You know what I really appreciated was the fact that it's in HD now on YouTube.
Yeah,
that was really nice.
Cuts everything off. That's the sad thing to me. Is
a little
cuts
bit.
everything
It cuts
out.
off some of the names and stuff, but I know who those people
what band
are.
Is that guy
so
in?
You know, you can usually kind of tell.
Is this guy part of Zayo or not? Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, God, it looks so much better.
Yeah. All right. At some point in 2005, not really sure when because I couldn't find any information on this, but after the DVD's release, guitarist Russ Cogdale would injure his knee requiring surgery, at which time he stepped aside from the band. With Russ out of the picture momentarily, Dan, Scott, Jeff, and Marty would head into the studio to write and record their next album, the follow-up to A Funeral of God, 2006's The Fear Is What Keeps Us Here from Ferret Records. Produced by Steve Albini and the band. Fun fact for you, Josh, jokingly, the album title was going to be called The George Lucas Neck Fat from Zayo. Now that would have been sick. I've got to listen to that one. Accompanied with a Making the Album DVD on special edition versions. Albini, now here you go with the production, Josh. Now listen to this. Albini took a live to analog tape production approach where the band would record all instruments live without, quote, fixing anything. Now, I immediately thought of two things. I immediately thought of Norma Jean's Bless the Martyr, Kiss the Child, because they kind of did that in the same way where they recorded it live to analog and they didn't didn't use editing tools like Pro Tools or anything like that to fix it. And then I also think of the Chariots' first album, Everything is Alive, Everything is Breathing, Nothing is Dead, Nothing is Bleeding, where they recorded everything live. So basically what we got here is the bass, the guitars, the drums, they're all recorded at the same time in a live feeling. And then for Dan's vocals, he's going to record his vocals separately at a different time. But the way he recorded his was he would use a handheld mic. So basically a Shure mic, for example, at least, going through an amplifier to simulate an overdriven PA system at a small club show. So that's kind of where you get this kind of like, at times it almost like sounds muffled to me. I don't know. It's really strange to like try to like listen to it and try to figure out exactly what's like, okay, what is happening here? It's an intriguing sound. And I've seen a lot of back and forth from fans and like comment sections of where like people really liked it. And then other people are like, man, I really wish they would go back and like remaster and remix and, make it sound better. Kind of like what you're saying with Funeral of God production. But the goal of this production in the end was to represent the band's live sound. Speaking of sound, are you listening to a song or am I having trouble coming through?
Yeah, no, I just my only little beef is that like you don't even have to go back and re-record it and really do anything like that or remaster it. I would have just liked for him to maybe do a sound check before, and then maybe we could just turn up the kick, or just a couple things like that where I'm just like, what the hell?
Yeah.
You know,
I
like I get it.
specifically his
You would have turned that up in the mix, but
yeah,
just turn up the mic, like during the sound check.
specifically his vocals, I feel like sometimes get lost in the mix of all the other instruments, not the mix like the mixing at the end, but just like it's like sometimes I really just can't hear his vocals, and it's like, okay, is that meant to be, or is that just like,
I was gonna say I
I don't
don't even
know.
really have beef with that because a lot of
I don't have
Converge
beef with
stuff
it.
is
I'm just
like
saying, like,
that, you know?
sometimes it's kind of like, oh, I'm kind of losing them. Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing, though, I will say that I think doing the production that way, though, lends to it lends to, I think they're really going for a chaotic sound. And I don't want to say like that their live sound is chaotic, like in terms of like the Chariot, because nobody's like that. That's just crazy. But I think I'm not gonna lie, Josh. When I first listened to this album, I was I didn't like it, and mainly because of the production. It was just like, what is this? What is going on? And then like reading, up on it and how they did it, why they did it, and then listening through it a couple more times, it started kind of growing on me. And then I started to think, okay, I feel like it kind of lends to like this chaotic sound and visual that they're going for. And then it's like, if I this is weird, but if I listen to the album and then I just like look at that album cover behind you, it's like, oh God, this is insane. This is crazy. And I like it. It's an interesting sound. Now, again, I'm with you. I would be interested to hear what this album would have sounded like if they had the production that they had on Funeral of God, but obviously this is what we have. Yeah. But anyway, that's what I got.
I mean, all that being said, it is a great album.
Yes.
It just you wonder what could have been, you know.
Yeah.
But it is a really good album. Everything's there. Um, I don't have anything bad to say about this album. I don't think it hits as hard as like Funeral of God or Fears What Keeps Us Here, but
You mean
or
Awake?
not
Or are you talking about Well
no
Intentioned? Oh, Where Blood?
yeah, Blood and
Oh,
Fire.
okay. Yeah. No,
Um
I hear you. I mean, it's definitely like, I think you're definitely experimenting,
yeah,
with
but
what you
it's not
have.
too
And
much that you're like, what the hell is this?
yeah, this is Zayo. Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
It's like
In
just
terms,
enough.
yeah, in terms of a concept for the album, we had one for Funeral of God. There's really no strict concept to this one. Um, Instead, there are many topics covered throughout the album, such as politics, false interpretations of the band's purpose, American priorities, zombies, and and much more. But the band has stated that the underlying theme overall is, quote, loss of control. Eduardo Rivadavia blah, 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 of allmusic.com wrote in his review of the album, quote, 2004's legendary collection appeared to symbolize the nail on their collective coffin, especially as it followed the definitive departure of founding drummer and guiding force Jesse Smith. But long tenured members Daniel Wayand on vocals and Scott Mellinger on guitars were soon lured to carry on by a new contract with leading independent Ferret Records, hiring a new rhythm section and frightening many of their devout Christian followers with the following year's mixed review concept album, The Funeral of God. Then for its 2006 follow-up, The Fear Is What Keeps Us Here, here, the band teamed up with renowned analog-only producer Steve Albini and once again toned down, while not necessarily disowning, their Christian past to come up with an album, their 11th, representing the very extreme of what one might still like to categorize as metalcore. True to Zayo's pioneering standards, uncompromising new tracks like Kingdom of Thieves, There's No Such Thing as Paranoia, and the zombie love story, My Love, We've Come Back from the Dead, are as memorable as they can be perplexing, combining lyrics as arcane as they are thought-provoking with daunting musicianship, discordant riffs, percussion avalanches, and death growls as guttural as has ever been heard this side of the Atlantic. In other words, here's a band consciously fighting their own fans' preconceptions while challenging themselves to push the envelope of extremity, just as the bulk of their contemporaries are taking the right hand path in search of a good commercial score. That in itself justifies Zayo's continued existence despite the recent departures and travails. They still have an important mission to fulfill. Now, songs on this album include Cancer Eater, delicious. Physician, heal thyself. Everything you love will soon fly away. It's hard not to shake with a gun in your mouth. Kingdom of Thieves, killing time till it's time to die. There is no such thing as paranoia. Pudgy young blondes with lobotomy eyes. My love, we've come back from the dead. American Sheets on the deathbed, and the finale, A Last Time for Everything. Talk to me about the songs, Josh. Anything that really like drops off for you though in this album?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, there's not really like a dead point to me in the album.
Okay.
One thing that I do find slightly annoying is that in the music video for My Love, We've Come Back from the Dead, they play Cancer Eater like going into that song. And then when you listen to it on the album, it just feels awkward because it ends and it doesn't go into that song, and they kind of go together. So
You don't
I don't
like
know.
Cancer Eater?
I do. I just
Okay.
would. I just, and I
It
don't
did
know
throw
if
me
I would
off
like.
too.
I don't know if I would like My Love to be track number 2. You know, I
No,
don't know if
yeah.
it would be great there. So I don't know what the solution is to that. Maybe just don't do it in the music video, and then it doesn't feel
Yeah.
clunky on the album.
I'm about to say I feel like that's
But
more probably of a Ferret Records thing,
yeah,
you know. Um yeah, that's a great way to open up an album with that riff. And then just again looking at that album artwork in the background, I was like, ugh, chills down your spine, man. There's a lot of
wasn't
like horror type theme to this
wasn't
for sure.
Cancer Eater. Um, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. Never mind. I was gonna
What's
ask
that?
if it was the music for the DVD menu, but it wasn't. It was
Ugh, I don't know, man.
um
Was it not Lesser Lights?
I think it was because it was
I was like,
that
I
riff.
would assume you would just
Diddly
go with that.
diddly 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 diddly. Yeah,
Yeah,
that one.
yeah.
Um, yeah, this album slaps. The artwork is sick as hell.
It's
Um, you can really see, like, in the documentary, Dan talks about how him and Jesse would just sit around and watch like horror movies and like really messed up movies, and then come up with, some stuff to write about or whatever. And yeah, I feel like when you see the music video for My Love, when you look at the album artwork for this album, when you listen to the rawness, when you read the song titles, like everything about this screams like horror, not horror punk, but like just kind of like a horror metal, horror hardcore kind of thing.
yeah,
His vocals have always paired really well with that. So yeah,
the
I don't know.
vocals, man.
It works for me, even though it's not as heavily produced. And there's some stuff I would have changed just in the recording itself. Literally like just some mic stuff, not even anything
Yeah,
like big,
I hear
but
you. Yeah,
it's still like this album goes so hard. So
love the intro on Cancer Eater. Even loved like the kind of the loud. It's not a squeal, but like that thick, heavy feedback as like the full band comes in on Cancer Eater from the amp.
Mhm.
Oh, that's so sick. I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, what's wrong with my headphone? Like, ah!
Oh my God.
God, dude, his low vocals at the beginning of "Physician Heal Thyself" when he says "Physician Heal," oh, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, man, so good. And then I put in my notes, I love on "Everything You Love will soon fly away" when he says that. Every time he says that, when he says "away" at the very end, it's like he keeps getting higher and higher until it's just like sounds like a girl just screaming at the top of her lungs or something. And it always makes me laugh, man. But so good. He is just so underrated as a vocalist, dude.
Oh yeah.
It's just so insane, man. And it's disrespectful. Put some respect on Dan's name, people. Come on now. Give him his flowers, people. But
I love
yeah,
how in the doc that Jesse talks about like how he ran in to
yes.
tell a
Yep.
couple of them like in the booth, like, hey, you gotta come hear this. And like he had really found,
Yeah.
his
On Where Blood and Fire. Oh,
yeah.
that intro though, man. I mean, the first time you hear him in Zayo is Lies of Serpents, and just like
Mhm.
him coming in on that. Your eyes. It's like, oh God. Oh
Yeah.
Lord.
So
Yeah.
underrated.
I need more of this in my veins. Yeah, just such a good album, man. Such a good vocalist. Um, yeah, just a good one overall, man.
Yeah, both these
These
albums they're gold. They're gold, Curtis.
they're gold, Jerry. Gold. Yeah, all three of these albums I found myself easily going. I'm turning that on from the first song and I'm letting it go, and I can flip it right back over and do it again, man. Easily. So, all right. Anything else for 2006's The Fear Is What Keeps Us Here, Josh?
I don't think so. I would say
Alrighty.
if you're, you know, talking accessibility,
Yeah, let's hear it.
I think you come in on Funeral of God
Mhm.
and then you're so blown away that you have to listen to everything Zayo has to offer now. But you're especially going to listen to The Fear Is What Keeps Us Here and Awake. And
Mhm.
that's probably going to want to make you go back and listen to Blood and Fire. A lot of the super early stuff is not going to be for everybody. And I'm
Liberate.
not going back to listen to what's
Nah,
his
I'm done
face
with.
on vocals. I don't give a shit about that.
Yeah, I'm getting past that one. Zayo officially starts with Where Blood Fire Bring Rest, man. So,
Yeah. It's almost like a
um,
rebirth for the band.
yes, yeah. And then I was gonna say, you said you get done with Awake, and then you go back to Where Blood, and then you go, Liberate, and then you kind of go through, self-titled, da da da, and then you realize, oh, they put out more albums recently, and then you go listen to Well Intentioned Virus, and you're like, I need more, man. And then you go listen to some of the EPs, and then you listen to Crimson Corridor, and I've only heard like two songs off of Crimson Corridor, but so far, Josh, I like what I hear, man. I like what I hear. So you
Those
still haven't
two that
heard
they
anything,
put out
right?
before, not from that one,
Okay.
but I was super hyped
Keep
when
your ears pure.
I was super hyped when
Save
Well Intentioned
yourself.
Virus like got announced. I was just like, "Are you
Oh,
kidding me? Like Zayo's back." I was worried,
yeah.
but I was hype.
Need not worry, Josh.
Yeah, they blew me
It's
away with that one. Pyrrhic
uh,
Victory also still bad as hell because there's only five
mm-hmm,
tracks and they're
uh-huh.
gold. They're gold,
All
Curtis.
gold. They're all gold, Josh. Gold. Yes. Can't wait for
And
that
then
one,
yeah,
man.
I haven't listened to the Crimson Corridor, but I can tell you that is some a badass artwork. That's Zayo. That's Zayo as hell. That Curtis.
Oh,
That's Zayo as all get out.
now if that's not Zayo, I
I
don't
don't
know
know
what
what
is.
is.
After several
Okay.
tours to support their new album, members Scott Mellinger and Dan Wayant agreed to take a long break. Drummer Jeff Gretz, eager to continue to tour, would join the band from Autumn to Ashes. And in mid 2008, the band would reconvene and start to write and record new material for their next release, 2009's Awake? From Ferret Records. Produced by Tim Lambesis from As I Lay Dying, Daniel Castleman, Dave Heideck, and the band Zayo. The band were without a label as they had finished their 2-album contract with Ferret. But Ferret would come in the 11th hour and distribute the album with almost no marketing at all. In fact, only 8,000 copies, Josh. 8,000 copies were made. That's it. It's crazy. The band would return to using Pro Tools rather than analog recording like they previously did on The Fear Is What Keeps Us Here. Fred Keel of JesusFreakHideout.com wrote in his review of the album, quote, Scott's guitar tracks are just as heavy and brutal as they were from the days of Liberate te ex inferis. Dan's screaming voice is still a landmark in the hardcore genre. But there are a couple of tracks. 1,000,000 Outstretched Arms and The World Caved In, where he offers some spoken word lyrics as well. It's not so bad, but it sounds like Dan was only speaking into the microphone plainly, and there's no passion behind the words he says. Remember that. We'll talk about it in a second, because I got something to say about that too. I know. For the most part, Zayo has attempted... I can't hear you. You're on mute.
I said I want to slap the shit out of this guy.
We're coming for you, Fred.
Oh my God.
Okay, back to Fred. He says, for the most part, Zayo has attempted to completely separate from Christian music and have chosen to tackle hard topics such as suicide, hypocrisy, and apathy in our culture. Perhaps the most spiritual track in the album is What Will You Find, which speaks about a closed-minded individual who only accepts what he or she believes is true. Truth, quote, you conform your faith, making your opinion true. Lash out every time something disagrees with you. You're obsessed with protecting some type of pride. The album finishes with the second part of Quiet Passenger Part 2 called The World Caved In, a farewell song to a high school friend who was very close to guitarist Scott Mellinger. Quote, the world caved in on my friend today. With his shaking hands, he closed his eyes and walked away without a reason or goodbye. There is usually one question that pops into my head upon listening to Awake over and over again. Is this their best material to date? The answer is definitely no. But this album is an evident improvement over The Fear Is What Keeps Us Here. The songs are professionally recorded and have more of a raw and unpolished feeling when compared to their previous material. Christian fans of the group will need to keep an open mind and not expect an evangelical message while listening to Zayo. Fanatics of hardcore metal will enjoy being awake and need to add this album to their music collection. On the part where he says Christian fans of the group will need to keep an open mind and not expect an evangelical message. I think they left that behind when Splinter Shar's The Birth of Separation came out. Well, no, I guess after that. Because, I mean, in terms of, like, evangelical messages, I mean, they cover some topics about, like, religion from, like, you know, where blood and fire bring rest and onward and some of their, like, beliefs, but nothing like, you know, evangelical, you know? Especially compared to the first two albums where they were calling on the name of the Lord there, man. So, yeah, I don't know.
Plus,
I think that guy's a little bit further behind.
Yeah, and okay, so some dummy's going to make the argument that Funeral of God is, you know, it's like a Christian focused album, but it's like a lot of bands have made albums about like the end of the world,
right?
You know, in some capacity or whatever. It's not like it's not like a this is what's happening, so you better do this. It's just like a what if? Like
What
what
if?
if that happened? Like
Yeah.
so I don't know. I think you're right. Like they departed from that when what's his face stopped doing vocals.
Yeah. I can't remember what his name is right off the top of my head. The guy who ended
But
up doing Symphony in Peril. But yeah,
yeah, I am like
I agree with
bursting at the
him.
seams to talk about the DVD and like some of the stuff that they discuss and like
We're almost
those
there.
early guys' perspectives and shit. Like just yeah. So
Yeah. Well, songs on this album include 1 Million Outstretched Arms of Nothing, Entropica, The Eyes Behind the Throne, Human Cattle Masses Marching Forward, Romance of the Southern Spirit, which came from the bonus track off of Funeral of God. It was re recorded for this very album. There's also What Will You Find? Awake, Quiet Passenger Part 1, Reveal, Quiet Passenger Part 2, and The World Caved In. So go ahead, Josh. Let's hear what you have to say about 2009's Awake. Mm-hmm.
Awake is awesome too. All three of these albums are straight through, no down point for me. They're all very different, and I like that about them. But they're still Zayo. Like all the key elements are there. That you're like, this is Zayo. There's just a couple little, variations they change. On this album, one of the things that they add is Scott's clean vocals, like a lot more of that. You
I
see
was
it
about
a
to say,
little
if
bit here
you're,
and there.
yeah, I was about to say, if you're looking more for a melodic version of Zayo, this is the album for you,
And what's
for
weird
sure.
about this album is it's like a 2009. This feels like a classic, like 2003, 2004 album with
Okay.
some of the music that they're playing, some of the
Mhm.
styles. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of nostalgia to this album, and it doesn't come from when this album came out. It's got an
Maybe a lot of
earlier
this,
sound,
maybe a lot of
something maybe
this,
they're trying to get back to.
yeah, or maybe some of the stuff was written back then and they just kind of like put it in the, in the back of their mind, riff wise or such,
Yeah.
or maybe even lyrically too. Who knows? Some of the, you talk about some of these bands that have been around forever. I mean, there's no telling like the catalog of stuff that they have, maybe of like stuff that they wrote, years ago that they still haven't even put into a song, but it's still there,
Yeah.
waiting, waiting to see the light of day. Yeah.
I think
But I get what you're saying.
Romance of the Southern Spirit's one of those songs that I think a lot of people don't realize that they know. And I think if you put it on, a lot of people who are into this kind of music, who listen to those bands, even during that time period, you heard this song on a sampler somewhere or on
Mhm.
A Taste of Chaos or one of those. It's just one of those songs that I think a lot of people don't realize, like, oh, I already know a Zayo song. You probably know one or two if you ever got any of those samplers. Love the
Talk to,
spoken word on
yeah,
the World Caved In.
I
Quiet
was,
Passenger 1 and 2 are both really good. Like I said, the whole album's great. It does feel like it kind of kicks up to a different level after Romance of the Southern Spirit. Like it kind of shifts gears a little bit, it
mhm.
feels like. Um, but yeah, the whole thing is great overall to me.
I was going to ask you what you thought about his comments on the spoken word deal. My thing too is it's kind of like his quote on the evangelical message. Just like, dude, Dan, it's not like this is the first time Dan's done spoken parts. He's done some spoken parts before, and to me, it doesn't sound any different than what he did in A Million Outstretched Arms and even The World Cave In. That's just
He
how he
did
does it. That's his style of spoken word.
Yeah, he does it in Truly, Truly, This Is the End. And it's exactly the same.
Well, then
There's
not even that.
literally
It's
just
like,
more behind it. So
right.
maybe it feels like it has a little bit more life, but I have no problem with Dan doing this. That's who Dan is. Dan is the most like, you listen to him talk in the
You don't tell
TV's
Dan what
like,
to do.
that dude is depleted and he is
Yeah.
just, he's a pretty soft spoken guy.
Yeah.
Um, And it kind of goes with their whole horror kind of thing, just the spoken word stuff. He doesn't have to do he's not reading a freaking audio book. Like,
Right.
I don't know. I don't have any problem with it. And I feel like, again, we're just digging at a great album to try to find one thing to say is not good. Like, why go to the trouble to say, is Awake their greatest song ever? No, I
Greatest
don't think
album.
so. But here's something about something else on the album. Like, what the hell? That was so unprovoked. Like, just to say that no, you didn't think this one random song, which is one of their lower played songs on the album, is it their best? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So
Here's
I feel like,
my
again, we're just kind of picking at
right.
something that's overall really good to try to find one little negative to talk about just for the
Right.
sake of the article. So
That's why I throw these reviews in, just to see you freak out on the review.
bunch of jackasses.
What an idiot!
Yeah.
This is my impersonation of Dan doing spoken word, reading an audiobook. Mary had a little lamb. Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow. Where's the emotion? I could. I'm not gonna lie. I could listen. I could probably listen to Dan do an audiobook. I could
I'd
probably
listen
do
to
that.
Dan read an audiobook. I'd
But
listen
no, I
to him
was.
read like Night of the Living Dead or something like that.
Yeah, something kind of horrorish.
Yeah.
Um, I could see. Or no, I was going to say he's been doing spoken word all the way back on Where Blood and Fire Bring Rest. The very end of To Thank You is a treasure. What blah blah blah. I mean, he does spoken word on there, and it's the exact same way that he does it on these ones and on Funeral of God. It's all the same, bro. So that's why I'm kind of like, again, it's like, are you just now getting introduced to Zayo, or
I'm
like
like, yeah,
what? I mean,
have you listened to any other Zayo albums, or are you just a dick reporter?
yeah, I don't know, man. Anyway, anything else on 2009's Awake?
No.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great
Cool.
one, and it's in my three most accessible albums for sure.
It's a good one. Yeah. The melodic and Scott singing definitely lends to the accessibility, I would think, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, here we go. During the time between the release of The Fear is What Keeps Us Here and Awake, guitarist Russ Cogdale would be in and out of the band, but now would rejoin the group full time. The band stated in a social media update post that the lineup currently consisted of Dan on vocals, Scott on guitar, Russ on guitar, Marty Lund on bass, and Jeff Gretz on drums, along with stating how surprised they were at the support they received from their previous album, Awake, as it had no marketing behind it and no tours to support it. And again, like I said, Ferret came on, they recorded it, and they really weren't sure what they were going to do distributing wise, who their label was going to be. And at the 11th hour, Ferret was able to kind of come in and say, okay, well, we'll go ahead and distribute it for you. But again, only 8,000 copies were made. No marketing behind it at all. No supporting tour for it. And so for the band, it was definitely a surprise that their fan base reacted as well as they did to the album. Great album, man. We just talked about it. We both loved it. All in all, it showed that the fans still cared about the band after all these years. All right. Happy ending, man. And so, what would the band do in response to that fan support, Josh? Well, they went on hiatus. And that's where we'll leave it. Now, Josh, I know you're dying to talk about it. So let's talk about it. Let's give the last however many hours that we have left here, because I'm sure it may be hours. I mean, the DVD itself is 3 hours long. But let's talk about the lesser lights of heaven, Josh. I'll let you start.
So the beginning, when we're talking with a lot of these guys who were Zayo in that first phase.
Mhm.
They're going a different direction. Not kind of, they're going a different direction. And this is more than just like Christian metal or Christian hardcore. This is like as an instrument
It's it.
of,
Very evangelical, man.
yeah, as an
In your
instrument
face.
of recruitment,
Mhm.
um, which I'm not going to say that there's anything wrong with, but I found myself a lot more than I remembered identifying with Jesse through a certain period of this,
Mhm.
um, where he kind of gets to the point with them where he's like it's hard for us to continue to try to do this thing in these different spaces that's not just like a church youth group thing because we're like
We're
and
growing
not
and we're keeping ourselves in this box. Because Dan said it too. It's like in that time, it's like if you're in that scene, but you were in a Christian band, it's like you were just playing like YMCA's, the basements at a church, at a local church, where, and that was it. And it's like those are few and far between. So it's like you really couldn't branch out into like bigger stages, bigger scenes, you
yeah.
know.
And like Jesse said, they were, and not that you should care, but they were pissing a lot of people off, like, other bands and stuff that they would like be playing with. And to that point, though, I will say that he says at one point, like, yeah, we're doing like call outs and, like stopping the show
Like an
for
altar
stuff
call,
like that.
basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
altar calls and stuff. And like, that's not, I don't think that that is necessarily the spot
Well,
for it
it's
when you're playing a show with other bands who aren't Christian bands. And
Well, and it's kind of like what Jesse said, I think, to Sean Jonas, which was their second vocalist. So he did the two albums, their two first full length albums. And he basically told him at one point, it's like, look, we gotta tone this down, because one of the things is like, you're doing the same thing every night and people know what you're about. There's no mistaking it. They know that you're up there, you're preaching and da 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 da. So it's like, why keep doing that over and over and over when it's like they already know what you're about? So why are you just getting up there and just basically preaching and doing these altar calls and everything like that? Just live the life, be an
yeah,
example. Don't force it down someone's throat, you know.
yeah.
So
And I've been to plenty of metal shows where there's at least one Christian band on the bill.
mhm.
Um, Never rubbed me the wrong way when somebody was just like, at the beginning of their set, something like, "Hey, just wanted to like tell you guys that, um, if you feel like there's nothing, then like there is something, blah, blah, blah." And then here we go. We're like into the music, we're doing our thing. I have been to shows where one single band that was Christian that was on a bill, that was the opener, spent like, swear to God, what felt like 10 minutes in between each song with just like a whole spiel. Like you could tell, like most of it was not just coming to him in the moment. This was all like rehearsed.
Pre-planned, yeah. Who was
And
that? Do you know?
I do not remember. All I
Wasn't like,
remember,
was it a bigger band or was it kind of more small local?
they were smaller, I think.
Okay.
But I will tell you this: I do remember Brandon standing next to me, and a long ways into the last time they did it, him just going, "Shut up!" The guy got
Hmm.
so mad about it. Like, yeah, he was so pissed.
Okay.
But yeah,
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
it's it just it's not the place for a sermon, regardless of the genre. I'll
Mhm.
give any band, a good 30 seconds to talk about what they want to in
Well,
between songs, regardless
n-
of what they're going to talk about.
not
I
even
don't
that.
want,
It's like let's
you
let's
know?
let's talk let's talk about Zayo, right? And those first two albums, they're very evangelical. So why do you feel like you have to be up there talking for 10 minutes in between songs, doing what you're doing, when it's like you already wrote songs about it, and we're here
Right.
for the
Yeah. We already
music.
played the songs.
So play the music and let your music be the sermon, let the music be the message, you know?
Yeah.
And again, it's like I'm okay with it like here and there, but it's like, I mean, you already wrote the songs. It was like the song is your message. You know, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm attracted to it because of the song. I like the song, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
And then of course, it gets further and further away from that.
Well, it just gets to the point where it's like it's not evangelical. We just talk more. There's just kind of topics with Dan's relation to the church and his beliefs, and then you start growing more and more into just like regular topics of, like I said, politics, suicide, the band's purpose, yada yada yada. You know,
Well, it's
so
like it almost feels like when it starts to click is the point when because in the first era, it's Jesse who's the only one towards the end feeling that way, like feeling um like he's seeing through some of the more superficial things that are presented about the church.
mm,
Like they all
mm,
talk about that everywhere they went, they felt like it was about how you dressed and how you looked and not like who you were.
yeah,
Um, and so whenever it clicks is when it's these guys who have all been kind
do the
of,
same thing. Yeah,
yeah. And I think that's
outcast.
when I think that's when it really like clicks in to it, that healthy mix of this is a song about that, this is a song about superficial beauty, this is a song about, so
Yeah,
that's when it kind of clicks in a little bit for them. But God, man, Jesse just he's something. I I do it seems to be a general consensus, and he even says himself, I remembered it more like Jesse being kind of the villain in all this, But watching it again, I identified with him a lot more. I like agreed with a lot more of the things that he said. And also it's evident that he owns up to everything that he did. He owns up to the fact that he's hard to work with. He owns up to the fact that he was a control freak. He owns up,
yeah,
like he owns up to pretty much everything. And
right.
so I don't know. I don't view it like, I guess my memory of it was it's like a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah,
It's just the
I mean,
fact that like I think his depression plays this like massive part in all of this.
for sure. Yeah,
And I think he's manic as hell
yeah,
because he goes back and forth so much between like, yes, I'm all in on this and to like, no, this I don't want to do this. And it's so hot and cold. There's not a lot of middle ground with him. So
yeah. I've talked about it over the last two episodes and even this one. Um, Great drummer, great musician. I don't hate the guy, but and I'm with you. He owns up to, he is aware of his own self being. He owns up to it, but I don't know. He just rubs me the wrong way, man. He just feels pretty arrogant at times. I don't know, man. Great drummer.
I
Put
mean, I
metal in,
get
man.
why you feel that way for sure.
Yeah. Well, there was, and I can't remember. I was going to say there was one line that he said it was towards the end of his tenure, and it had to do with, I think it had to do when Dan was kind of like on the fence about whether he wanted to do it full time or not. And but I can't remember what it was, but it was almost like he kind of contradicted himself. Jesse did on what he said. I can't remember right off the top of my head what it was. And I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Great drummer. Did I mention that? He's a great drummer. I mean, here's the other thing about it. I mean, like the guy, hate the guy. Without him, Zayo wouldn't be where they are because if he would not have been as adamant about, well, if you guys are leaving, I'm still going to take this band. I'm going to go. I'm going to continue this on. Zayo could have been just dead in 1997, 98, and we wouldn't be here sitting talking about it, about the funeral of God and fear and awake and well intentioned and so on and so forth. Where blood, and fire bring rest. So I definitely got to give props to him on that. He had a vision for it. And once guys like Sean Jonas and Mick Cox and others left, he picked it up and he took it to a new height, for sure. So
Um, Dan's whole story, I forget how like sad his whole story is.
well, and the other thing too is on Well Intentioned Virus, one of the songs, well, it's the first one, Weeping Vessel, is about his first child being stillborn. So I mean, that dude is like he just can't catch a break in life. I mean, the amount of like friends and such that have just killed themselves, to the rejection of the church, against him and things like that. And then leading up to stillborn child. It's just like, man, there's people like that. It's just like they just can't catch a break, it seems like, in their personal life, you know.
Yeah.
You feel bad for him. He always, I can't remember if I said this or not, he always made me think of his vocal style for one at times, not all the time, but at times. And then sometimes the way he kind of looked in certain, especially on that DVD where when he's wearing that hat and everything, and he's a little chunkier. He makes me think of Zach Taylor that we knew growing up that I played in a band with. Um, Especially when Zach got into Murder of Crows. He really started finding his screaming voice. He kind of sounded like Dan at times, kind of that gurgly growl.
Mm-hmm.
So I always think of Zach when I see when I see Dan or I hear Dan vocally. But yeah, it's poor Dan. But again, it's one of those where it's like his pain is our pleasure, man. I mean, unfortunately, because
It produces some great lyrics.
he has wrote some really good bangers. And again, like we talked about before, his vocals take it to another level, take those lyrics to another level, man. So yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. It has, I don't think it's, it's not a part of the doc that's on YouTube, but the second disc had those live performances, and one of them
Yeah.
was live at Glass House.
Yeah.
And that's got to be
I
one of
hated
my
that I couldn't
favorite
find that, man.
lives that I've seen.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
you
hate that
couldn't
I couldn't
find live
find.
at Glass House?
No, I'm just talking about, well, the DVD at least. I didn't look up live at Glass House. I can look that up, but
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say
um
I've got it right here.
oh, okay.
They also put that in 4K HD, so don't worry about that.
Nice. Okay, good. Good, 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 good. You know what I'm watching tonight? Pop some popcorn, man. Let's get it going. Yeah, that was a good part of the DVD too, was the live set. But anything else on that?
Um, well, was there anything you want to talk about from the doc?
Not really. I mean,
I
one
mean,
thing I was going to
it's
say was I've talked a lot, and I know mainly it was about Jesse, but I mean he was a big part of the documentary. But that was I've already talked a lot about the documentary in little spurts here and there, so I was leaving it more for you to see what you had to say about the documentary. But um,
what
I
sucks,
don't know,
dude, is
man.
like out of I still had like I think 30 minutes or so left in the rewatch, but being 3.5 hours, and you can sum most of it up by saying what we said about the first era, and then most of the second era of Zayo, especially before Jesse leaves, is like about will they, won't they? And it's just a lot of back and forth. There's not even really that much drama. It's just the fact that like these guys can't figure out if
Decision.
they want to do this. You get to a certain point, and it's all well and good to be all in on your music when you're a kid, but it's a tough choice later on when you're thinking about stability, for the future. And not
Yep.
everybody thinks like that, but you have that with Dan where he's like, okay, like how long am I going to be able to do this? And if it doesn't work out, if Jesse decides next week that we're done, like,
I don't have a job. Yeah.
yeah. So,
He's torn between the band and the tattoo shop, because he talked about it at that one point. It's like he was offered an apprenticeship, and it's like you're either doing this or you're not.
mhm.
And yeah, so feel bad for him at that point because I mean, yeah, that's you're really torn between two things that you really love, and you feel like you have to decide on one or the other. And unfortunately, fortunately, it worked out for him in the end. He was able to, come in on those two albums, the self-titled and Parade of Chaos, and be able to contribute vocals in a record amount of time, which is insane, man. Again, just another testament to how great of a vocalist and how underrated he is as a lyricist.
Yeah.
Um, just
Um,
insane, man.
Let me ask you this. Is Dan's haircut in Live at Glass House the most brutal Dan haircut?
Is that the one where he kind of has it like it's like all it's almost like shaved everywhere except for like that one like top piece?
It's like cut down to about an inch all the way around, except for like the whole
Yeah,
top. And the whole top is
yeah.
like is still as long as it
It
was when he cut it.
it always kind of I remember it always kind of freaked me out. I was like, is that dude? When I first watched it, be like, what is happening? That's the guy that's making that noise. And yeah, no, that's brutal, man. And it goes with again the gurgly vocals. It just makes it even better, man.
Yeah. You're just like, oh, this guy can do kind of just whatever he wants. Oh, he's doing kind of like a Misfits thing, but it's got a little
Yeah.
bit of like a that time early 2000s
Oh,
emo
that's
core
yeah.
kind of feel to it too.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice little mix there. Gotta love Russ on guitar, man, with the snake bites. And there's a couple of newer sets within like the last 5, 6 years where he always does this thing where, especially when they're playing, I think it's Lies of Serpents that he does it a lot. When they just hit the one note, the dun dun, they kind of let it ring out. It's like he's always just like he's got that long, long hair. He just like and he kind of like rolls his eyes back and is like, oh, bro, brutal. He's a
I
good
feel like
live
he would do
performer.
the eyes roll back thing a lot.
A lot, yeah. Almost wonder sometimes if he's wearing some of these live sets I've seen, if he's wearing like some of those like movie clear cut like contact or clear coating like contact lenses, kind of like mess with his eyes or whatever
Hmm.
to make him look weird. I don't know. Maybe that's just the
Huh.
lighting or something.
Weird.
Yeah, I could see that from a guy like that.
I don't know if I'm into that,
Ugh, ugh. Well, it's not like cat eyes. It'd be like
but
those like smoky look. I don't know.
I'm here for his soul.
Give me your soul. Yeah.
Uh,
What
cool.
else you got, man?
I I think that's about it for the
I
doc.
think
You know,
the one thing I would complain is I felt like it got to Funeral of God and then they just kind of rushed it at the very end. There wasn't much meat on the bone there in that documentary.
yeah.
I was expecting a lot more, being as it was like the latest album up to that point. I was like, oh well, it's over. Oh, okay. Would
But
have thought
look
there would have
back
been a
at the
little more
rest of the
information there.
doc, bro.
I
Like
know, I know,
70% of the stuff before that was just about the drama
I know. Yeah.
because they couldn't get their shit together. And then now that their shit was actually together, they're just like, yeah, we actually put out a really
What are we
cool
talking about?
album. Like, oh yeah, we like did the music video for, it's like, yeah,
I don't know
like
what to do with my
cool.
hands.
Well, we'll see where Zayo goes from here. Like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, bro, ultimately it boils down to that like so much of this, hours of it, is just these guys talking about how like either unhappy they were, with the way things were going. Like things would go great for a little while, and then it almost seemed like the mood was controlled by if Jesse was in or out that week.
True. Yep. Yeah, that's
So
true.
he was
Alrighty,
Zayo.
man. He was Zayo.
Yeah.
Notice we said was, or is
Yeah.
now Dan and Scott
He's
and
not
Russ.
anymore.
Yep. And actually, I mean, think about it. It's like, besides the fact that Russ is kind of in and out on these last two albums that we talked about in this episode, I mean, we have a set lineup that's been the same ever since Fear, in Dan on vocals, Scott on guitar, Russ on guitar, Marty on bass, and Jeff on drums, and it's been that way ever since up until this point and beyond. So that's really nice for a band that's full of turmoil and constant band member changes. So
Yeah.
Well, alrighty. Anything else on Lesser Lights, or even just this episode in general?
I don't think so. I think it's definitely worth like a watch. I don't know if you're going to sit down and watch 3 hours of it, but
It's
worth
nice.
the
I mean,
skim, you know?
I mean, some of my information I got from that DVD, but if you really want a deep dive into the history of Zayo, told by the members themselves who lived through all that chaos, definitely go take some time. You know, you don't have to watch it all in one sitting. I mean, I watched it periodically, you know. Give it a watch, man, you know, for sure. So already, 3 down, Josh, 1 to go. One more long journey. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at @IsSurvivedByPro for news and the latest episode postings, not just on this show, people, but our other shows as well. We have the History of the Cores After Hours podcast, which is where I sit down with my good friend and avid listener of this here podcast, Eric, and we talk about some of the bands that me and Josh have already discussed. We also have the Red Right Hand podcast, which has covered all 6 seasons and a few random episodes on some history stuff about the Peaky Blinders. There's also the Throne of the Dragon podcast, which so far has covered season 1, soon to be season 2. It's right around the corner. Can't wait.
Keep telling yourself that.
Right, man. It'll be here before you know it, dude. Soon to be season 2 of HBO's House of the Dragon. And currently we are in the middle of our Targaryen family history. We are getting ready to talk about Jaehaerys the First, and his peaceful reign. Long and peaceful reign. Also, while you're on Twitter, make sure to follow my co-host at Josh Winland. Gary, hey, it's right there. Right below him. Look at that. Oh, has it been there the whole time? Make sure to leave us a 5-star review and write us a comment on whatever podcast service you're using. And if you want to listen to us, see our smiling faces, head on over to our YouTube page. Just search Is Survived By Productions, and that'll have every episode from all of our shows. Subscribe to the channel, thumbs up the video. One more time to remind you all, come back for the next episode where we're going to finish up Zayo. It's part 4. Going to finish up Zayo. And at the very end of it, stick around, because Josh is going to give his top 5 Zayo album covers. Top 5. Until then, we'll see you.